Hi there. This year, REI opened a flagship store in Soho. This makes perfect sense to me. For while many New Yorkers find it almost impossible to leave the city to engage in the kinds of activities REI is promoting, the very idea that out there somewhere there's a place free from crowds and branding and even meaning can act as a salve to the overstimulated masses yearning for transformation and connection. My upcoming project, Wild Times, has me thinking about the role wild spaces play in contemporary America, how they've influenced our cultural identity, and what happens to that identity as the number of and our actual encounter with natural wild spaces shrink. As a way of introducing Wild Times, I'd like to share 3 interconnecting stories that influenced the inception of the piece. In 2010, For Culture and the King County Department of Parks in Seattle asked me to create a work to activate the regional trail system. I think they had in mind something like a poster, but I convinced them to let me follow a more experiential approach. I created the Long Walk, where over the course of 4 days, I led 50 self-selecting participants over a 50-mile trek. We started in the city of Seattle and moved through the suburbs, farmland, and forest, ending our walk at Snoqualmie Falls, the location mythologized by the native Salish people as the Fountain of Life. During our 4 days together, we explored by foot and imagination, temporary utopias, interstitial cultures, and the meaning of home. To help this along, I devised methods of poetic exchange. For instance, we harvested fruits and vegetables from a trailside farm and then wrote love notes to future farmers market shoppers from the vegetables' point of view. I also invited fellow artists to create theme-responsive works cited all along the trail. In each of the project's 3 iterations, participants delighted as they became long walkers in what they themselves dubbed the slow movement movement. The project also affected the Parks Department. Prior to the project, they had planned on paving all the trails to create mini highways for bicyclists. Seeing the trails anew through the eyes of my project, they realized that in offering a place to slow down, they were offering residents something vital and increasingly rare. Throughout my practice, I've been using the body and experience as a way of exploring people, place, and our search for utopia. So maybe it's not surprising that creating these kinds of experiences has worked its way into my private life as well. This is my partner, David Wedby. He was a whitewater kayaker, a soccer player, and a rock climber until he had a rock climbing accident that left him paralyzed from the waist down with the use of only one arm. David and I have a lot of conversations about his difficulty in having one-on-one encounters of the world unmediated by accessibility issues. We've racked up a number of exploits and a few misadventures in our ongoing attempt to bring him untamed and authentic experiences. Throughout all this, David reminds me to be my body and to take myself to untrammeled places for the same reason that I make art, because both art and wild spaces have the ability to free us from the tyranny of fixed meaning and provide a place for discovery and recovery. One night we were coming home on the train when I noticed a very tall, bearded guy with a big backpack. He told me his name was Slim Jim and that he had just finished the Pacific Crest Trail. I then learned the Pacific Crest Trail, widely referred to as the PCT, is a 2,650-mile footpath stretching from Mexico to Canada through nearly every North American biome. Each year, roughly 600 backpackers, or through hikers as they call themselves, attempt the entire length. About half succeed. Slim Jim needed a place to stay, and I wanted to hear more about his adventure, so I invited him to come back to my house. At that moment, I unknowingly became what's called a trail angel, somebody who helps out through hikers. Over dinner, Slim Jim told me about bounce boxes, post-holing through the snow in the Sierras, going through 6 pairs of shoes, and trail angels, and the through hiker community and deep sense of connection that grew among them. At that moment, as we talked, I knew my next project would be staged on the PCT. Next. Oh, there we go. Starting in April of 2014, I will embark on Wild Times, a work of land art that takes its form as a through hike of the Pacific Crest Trail. Throughout the 5-month hike, I'll explore wildness as both a geographic ideal and a state of mind. Trail transmissions, projects I make along the way in the form of photo, sound, text, video, and 3D files, will be sent to satellite base camps, These could be anything from art venues, teen centers, private homes, and they'll be located all across the US. Imagine a family in Baltimore receives my transmission at their home. They invite their friends over and talk about wildness and how it impacts their lives. Simultaneously, a similar thing is happening for a writers group in New York, a teen center in Baltimore, and a museum in California. I don't yet have these base camps set up, so if you know of anything, please come and talk to me. The transmissions to these base camps are, of course, yet unknown, and that's one of the things that makes this project so compelling for me. It's like I'm entering into a double wilderness of both place and production. A transmission might consist of foraged huckleberries that are distilled into liqueur and then sent to base camps, where participants could sip and learn about local foraging. Or perhaps from the project blog and base camps, I could solicit messages to announce from the peak of Mount Whitney. Or perhaps I compose ephemeral trailside sculptures that are then beamed back to base camps where they spring to life again via a 3D printer. You might be thinking that it seems counterintuitive to use so much technology in a project about wildness. In my estimation, technology is both the cause of and solution to this project. On a typical day, I look at my iPhone and laptop to the point where I don't even sense my body. However, by immersing myself in the thru hike, I by necessity will change the most common moments of my daily routine. Rewriting this script will let me reimagine other conventions, but I'm not trying to take us backwards. From these remote places, I hope to grasp and share a hybridized version of contemporary life, one that invites a greater sense of autonomy and the untamed, but is still of the modern world. I want to serve as a conduit between gallery and wilderness, public and trail, form and formless, as a way to cultivate the wild terrain that resides in us all.